Hey. Welcome to Next Nation. I am your host, Sylvia K. Alston. Gonna jump right into it today. This episode is a continuation in some sorts, and it's really not. It's not a continuation. Let me move away from that. It's not a continuation. It is part 2 of a series of discussions that I am going to be having with a number of different voices about This Is America. I didn't plan for this series. It actually it came out of the response of what I saw on January 6th at our United States Capitol. The violence and the death now of 5 lives as of this recording kind of spoke to me in a way that made me think that I wanted to have conversation with people about how we are processing what we've seen. So in part 1 of the series, I speak with Dr. Jason Johnson, attorney Charles Coleman Jr., and attorney Midwin Charles to just kind of get their weigh in on what they saw on January 6th. We had a conversation about white supremacy and white nationalism and the effects of such on our nation. Part 2 of This Is America, right? And the emphasis is on is because I heard our president-elect Joe Biden say in one of his earlier speeches about the uprising, about the riot, about the domestic terror that we experienced on January 6th. I heard him say that this isn't who we are. And I disagree with that. I disagree that this is not who we as a country have been. And I think there's an opportunity for us to be better and for us to be different, but it requires a certain level of acceptance and a certain level of acknowledgement of who historically this country has been. And so this conversation is part 2. It's a follow-up discussion with risk mitigator and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging specialist, Torin Ellis. Torin Ellis is the owner of the Torin Ellis brand, and they operate as independent consultants. His company speaks with major corporations and organizations around the world about their duty and their responsibility to make sure that they are encouraging, engaging, and informing all of their workplace culture, all of the people who report or who belong to the organization. He does masterful work. He speaks around the world, having these conversations about what it looks like to be an employer who is embracing all of their employees. He does excellent work around the country doing this. And I asked him to come in, and the reason why I asked him to come in is because I saw a lot of response from people in social media saying that they were having a hard time coping with doing their work post watching what happened on January 6th. And for many people, there's many people who do not understand why Black and brown people are so aggrieved, are so taken, or can be so traumatized by these acts of violence when we see them. But there's historical reference and precedent, set that informs our trauma. And I think it's necessary to bring people in who can kind of speak to it a bit. And Torin and I had a really, really great discussion. We had a great discussion about where we are and how we can be better. And Torin is one of these people who asks real questions of our organizations and of us individually on how we can be better. And so next, my conversation with Torin. So I'm not going to call your whole government name over the airwaves, but Torin Ellis. I'm not going to throw that middle name out there, but Torin S. Ellis. Happy New Year and welcome to Next Nation.
And you know, now listen, that S stands for strong.
For sure.
That S stands for secure.
Soldier.
That S stands for soldier, like warrior. That S stands for we gonna get some shit done in 2021. Happy New Year. That's what that S stands for.
What's up, T?
Poppin', what's happening?
Good to see you.
Absolutely. It's as close as it's been in like over a year. Like I absolutely miss being in your presence, laughing with you, building with you. We strategize together. We do all of those things, but we've continued to be able to do those things the way that we do them through our, every so often touch points. So I miss seeing you in the flesh. I'm going to enjoy it right here now digitally.
I miss seeing you too. Yeah, you're right. It has been over a year. I think the last time I saw you was in December of 2019 for an episode of your show on Siriusxm, Career Mixed, which unfortunately ended in December of 20.
No. It's not unfortunate. It is the last time we saw one another, but it's not unfortunate. I absolutely believe that everything happens in a particular type of way. For sure. It took me 4 years to get to a national syndicated platform, one where we could reach virtually every individual, both here domestically and internationally. Right. I was there for 5 years. So it's not unfortunate. I'm actually better prepared to go after what's next. And the only reason I made it to SiriusXM and then build on that presence was because of you. So no, it's not, none of that is unfortunate. I am simply better positioned to do some things in 2021, and we gonna do those things.
So here's the thing, I always feel like you give me too much credit. Yes, did I put a battery in your back? For sure. But the fire came from you. I told you, I remember the first time I heard your voice in 2015.
Yeah.
In 2015. And I was not having a particularly good day in radio. It had been a bit hellish in the studio prior to your 5 p.m. segment. And I had kind of just sat back in my chair inside the studio and just kind of disconnected a bit from the microphone and from being engaged. And then I heard your voice. And it was something that you pronounced because I hadn't heard your first segment. I think this was your second. I wasn't in the studio for your first segment. And it was something about the way you pronounced the word. And I said, he's from Baltimore. I can hear it. I can hear it. I can hear it in his cadence. And you were talking about the workplace. You were talking about some of the problems that we experience as employees in the workplace. And it rang through my spirit. And I reached out to you separately and told you just how impressed I was with that segment and what you had to say. And then I did some background work about your work. And, we became friends, and we've been friends ever since. And so I thank you for all that you brought to that station, to that platform, because it was good work. It was great work. It was necessary work, and it helped a lot of people in their employment situations remain engaged. And I think it shined a light on some of the work that wasn't being done on the channel. You brought something to the channel that wasn't there before you arrived. And so you left an incredible and an indelible mark on the platform around diversity, around equity, around inclusion, around belonging inside of workplace and in workplace culture. And so all I did was try to make sure that you expanded upon that, because the brilliance in you was not enough for that 20-minute segment on Mondays on SiriusXM. So
I thank you for that. No, I thank you. And again, I just think about that was 2015, December.
Yeah.
And here we are now in January of 2020, and we have a void as it relates to career development and career progression on that particular channel, as well as on so many other channels around the country.
For sure.
And my mission and missive, a word that you enjoy using, my missive has always been this. Like, we can't complain about our lack of access and our inability to grow and to develop and to be inspired and to motivate and to pursue. We can't complain and put all of that complaint on any one body, on any one audience, on any one group, when we on our side are not necessarily protecting and providing the pathway for those things to happen. And so Black radio has been derelict. They have been derelict as it relates to career development, career progression. Sure, you have Black Enterprise Magazine. Every once in a while, they would have a bit of a article that would talk about the workplace. And when I say every once in a while, it might have even been in every single issue. I get it, no worry. But that was a monthly experience.
Right.
We go to work every single day.
Every single day.
Every single day. So for me, when I think about Black media, radio, television, internet presence, digital opportunities, when I think about newsletters, I think about our health and how important it is. And right behind that, I think about how we generate income. And some would say, Torin, well, that's a bit selfish because that's the space that you are in. But it's not that I'm selfish. I just don't want to see us continue to be left out of the conversation. Left out of the conversation. Yeah. And yet when we have it, we blame it and or we're punitive about a particular audience. Nah, there's no reason. There's no reason for us to be discussing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in the way that we are discussing it now. Yet there is a reason. And so I'm just here, Sylvia, to make sure that I address part of that formula, some of those reasons as to why we are where we are, and how do we shift that narrative? How do we change our relationship with power?
So that was deep. And, while you're talking, I'm thinking, because I had a meeting today with a huge broadcast company, and I mentioned your name. I called your name out in that meeting. And the reason I did that is because this company is dedicated to social impact. And right now, the social impact that they are working on is a place that is home for me, where they are headquartered in Newark, New Jersey. But they are working on a plan for this year on how to deploy and engage the work that they are doing in Newark, New Jersey, around the country. And one of the first places that they mentioned to start this seed program is in Baltimore. And as soon as they said it, my eyebrow raised, and they said, "You get excited about Baltimore?" And I said, "I get excited about Baltimore for a number of reasons. I get excited about Baltimore because I attended Morgan State University, which is a historically Black college and university that gave me the opportunity to develop my voice. But I'm also getting excited about you saying that you're going to be in Baltimore is because there is so much talent, untapped talent that needs additional exposure, and the work that you're going to do is going to kind of coalesce with that." And so I mentioned your name specifically in a room, and I believe that it's going to bear fruit. I'm really excited about what's going to happen in 2021. The reason why I'm excited, not just because of the deficits that you speak of and you talk about in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging space, but because I believe that the training wheels and the shoes are off. I truly believe that we have grown tired of approaching this work in a way that is just not anything other than brutally honest. And the brutality in your honest speak over the last couple of years, I've been watching it. I've been watching you come out of the gate a different way, and I love it. I love what you're doing.
I'm not a shrinking violet. No,
you are not. You never were. But something about turning this last corner that you turned, man. Yeah. You've been really seriously going at it, and I think that it's so necessary. It's that gray in the beard. Is that what it is? It's
hey, Sylvia, so
is
let me tell you.
Is it that 5-decade thing? Is that what it is?
It absolutely is. But I got to be honest with you and tell you that it hasn't always been this particular way. I've always been outspoken.
For sure.
I've always been a warrior of a voice, of a person, an agitator. I remember working for Union Pacific Railroad in Texas in the 90s. And you know this, I experienced an accident that almost took my life. But I remember a supervisor at that organization who said, we don't need any more Martin Luther Kings. He was talking about me, because I would tell my Hispanic colleagues, like, look, why are you only taking 21 minutes for lunch? We got 30 minutes for lunch. Take your 30 minutes. Stuff like that. They would call me Martin Luther King. I remember working in corporate America from 1993 to 1998, and the then executive director said, can't trust a black man with hair on his face, because I would speak up in the meetings and I would challenge some of the positions, some of the courses of action that we would take. Now, admittedly, Sylvia, I would say to myself, once I left corporate America, I took a reflection and I said, was that well timed? Did I operate in the 5 gates of speech, or was I outside of one of those 5?
Right.
And so I was honest with myself, like, you probably could have said that a little bit differently. You probably could have waited until a different moment to have that discussion, because I could see how having that discussion and the way that it unfolded seemed like you were being combative when you were not. So I understood that self-reflection, that's a part of leadership, being able to lead yourself. I understood, Torin, you made some mistakes. But what I can share with you, Sylvia, that over the last...
But no, I got to interrupt you. That growth and development and accountability, though, a lot of leaders don't have it. A lot of leaders do not have the ability to be honest with where they find themselves in leadership, because leadership is a positioning. Developing leaders and being effective and good communicators, that takes skill, that takes accountability, that takes an awareness about who you are in this role that allows you to do those things. So I don't want you to gloss over that or move past that too soon, but go ahead.
You're absolutely right. And the final thing that I will say to that is, it's that culmination of events, that self-reflection, that experience in corporate America, that experience in the military. It's a self-reflection of all of that you see now manifesting over the last 5-10 years, where now I don't have to be a shrinking violet. I absolutely understand my value. If you tell me no, my world does not stop. Like, I can lose a $100,000 engagement. My world does not stop. You can tell me that my show is not going to be renewed. My world does not stop. There is nothing that will stop the tenacity in which I show up, because I show up out of love. I show up with a connectedness to a process, and I absolutely show up in truth. So you can do whatever it is that you like, but when I say it, I know it's out of love. I know I'm adding value to your process, and I know what I'm saying is true.
Love and process, your 2 of your favorite words, and so you said 2 of the most important words in the lexicon.
2 of the most powerful words in our lexicon. Powerful.
Yeah. Love and process. I brought you here today for that reason, love and process. I think what we need in our conversation today is an honest speak. A heart that has love for the people that you are talking to, but in engaging in a way in which that allows us to evaluate our processes. This past week has been hell for many. I am working on, this is actually episode 2 of a 2-part series that I did not intend to do. This was not what I intended to do with my week. But this is how life works, right? I had 2 episodes already planned to drop for Sunday, and they were completely outside of the realm of which I am now coming to the table to talk today. I did an episode last night with Dr. Jason Johnson, Charles Coleman Jr., and Midwin Charles. And that was part 1 of This Is America. And I asked you to come in and kind of talk a bit, because I made a couple of tweets, I made a couple of posts on LinkedIn, and I had people reach out to me almost instantly about the posts that I made on LinkedIn. And I address, LinkedIn is a space for me where we talk more so, more professionally. We talk about companies, we talk about organizations, we talk about company culture, we talk about workforce development, we talk about workplace culture, we talk about finding work, right? And so in those spaces, a lot of times people do not want to deal with the people that show up to those roles on a day-to-day basis. But I know that I've been two things all my life, Black and a woman. And I know that those two things have informed a lot of how I work, a lot of how I show up, and a lot of what happens or my experiences when I get into corporate culture were informed by the fact that I'm Black and I'm a woman. So even when I was succeeding, I couldn't turn off the fact that I was Black. Even when I was climbing the corporate ladder, if you will, I couldn't turn off the fact that I was the only Black woman in most of those rooms, right? And so when we find ourselves in 2021, after what took place on January 6th, where yet again there is a visual assault, a verbal, a humongous national and international display of violence on our institutions, on our traditions, on our government. I think it is time for us as people to talk realistically to corporations, to companies about the employees that work inside of these organizations, the people who look like you and I, who understand that there are two Americas. And when you get up on stages and say, this is not who we are, and yet Black and brown people know that 400 years of this is exactly who America is. And we're not being truthful with ourselves if we say that this is not who we are. When we go to work and when we go into those environments with that stress and with that knowledge and with that understanding of the other America that nobody wants to talk about, what it does to us in the workplace, how it hurts us, how it informs our experiences. And I couldn't think of a better person to have that conversation with other than you.
Well, you're on your Soledad O'Brien type, Black in America type joint. And I ain't even mad about it. Go ahead and build your library and your repertoire as well. Become that media force in this space that you desire to be. When you think about that two Americas, you're absolutely right. I'm not the smartest individual. And so I can't go point for point like some of the guests that you mentioned. What an incredible panel. Jason Johnson, Midwin Charles, and Charles Coleman. Mm-hmm. Yeah, an incredible group of individuals. But in my own humble way, to follow that up and to maybe add to whatever they deposited into your listening audience, when you think about every single example, whether it be an example of Bernie Madoff on Wall Street and George Floyd and a fake $20 bill, mm-hmm. whether it be the cats that's on the corner in Baltimore City and so many other cities that are moving dime bags of weed, or the white guy who wanted to sell the prescription drug for some 100 times the amount type joint, whether it be them individuals being able to get into the cannabis space and now they are making it prohibitive for Black and brown people to be able to even afford to get into the space legally. It doesn't matter to me whether you talk about Black Lives Matter and their frustration and disgust with how policing is done in Black communities. They'll mm-hmm. never compare that to the Blue Lives Matter and the loss of life that took place in early January on Capitol Hill. It doesn't matter. We can go point for point in every institution, in every system. There is two Americas. The only correction that I would make to what you presented in your monologue or your delivery there is we do talk about it. We just don't talk about it enough, and we don't have enough people talking about it. Like that chorus, you and I, we are opening up the hymn book and we are on the same page. And if we're not on the same exact page, we're at least in the very same hymn book. Mm-hmm. I still have Republican friends that are texting me and sending me messaging that are simply saying, well, there's no white privilege. Or when I say white privilege, they are giving me examples of how they had to work hard in their life. I still have Republican friends of mine that are white, that are black, that say that, but we are complaining and we are lazy, and they are feeding into all of the stereotypes that are associated with us as a people. And so the frustration for me is, how do you find that frequency, the one that will resonate with them and become melodic and cause them to pause for a moment and just have a different relationship with the exchange, to drop their fragility and to just simply be present and to listen. The challenge for me, and the only reason why I continue to do this work and do it with a spirit of humility, of inspiration, of connectedness and presence. The reason I do it that way, Sylvia, is because I always remind myself, well, what happens if I say I'm checking out? What happens if I say that I'm done? I just said a moment ago, there's not enough of us, and it's not happening by enough people in enough or at enough of a pace. If I check out, then I leave a void.
Yeah.
And I know my voice is big.
Yeah.
I know my voice is strong. I speak all around the world. I know that my voice is, and it's one that is respected. So when I back out, what happens?
Right.
Like, I'm holding myself accountable, like I would want politicians and others to hold themselves accountable.
Yeah.
What's my succession plan look like? Who am I depositing into? Who am I grooming so that they take the 100 years of research that I've internalized, and I said, this is how I can take that information and move it in a way that impacts D&I efforts in organizations. Now, how am I taking that 100 years of research and study that I've internalized, that I speak on, that I consult on, that I strategize on? How am I packaging that and giving it to some folks that are behind me so that they can do it in a way that is different, that leverages technology better, that leverages their influence better, that allows them to resonate with their audiences better? How do I, in a way of succession, continue to grow and amplify that's my challenge. So I can't give up. I'm always, no matter how disappointed I am, I'm always challenging myself to say, but what happens if you quit?
Right.
And I can't answer that, and I'm not happy with the potential of answer. And so I got to keep going.
So we got to keep going. So let's keep going. When I think about what we saw on January 6th, I come at this with a thought that, for most of us, we were watching what was happening to our government. We were watching what was happening to our institutions. But for the people who were in that building, they were experiencing what was happening in their workplace, right? And so for us, as some of us go back into our workplaces, or if some of us show up to our computers, and cut them on and try to do the business of the day, but still feeling all of that vitriol and all of that pain and seeing all of that violence, you have to process that in a way. And I thought about my father. And this story personally because I've shared it with you, but I'm gonna share this publicly. And I shared this story publicly in a speech that I did in December. I talked about the fact that I found my father's psychiatric folder in February of 2019. I don't know what. I don't know what. No, I do know what. I had a dream about my father. My father doesn't really come to me in dreams anymore, but he came to me in the dream that morning. And I got up at 5 a.m. and went into my garage. I don't know what sent me to my garage, but my father had a box that I took from his house when he died, and I stuck it in the back of my closet. And then when we moved again, I stuck it in the back of my first garage, and it's in the back of my garage in my home. And something sent me to that garage and to that folder. And I opened up that black folder and I sat with it and began to read my father's words to his psychiatrist from 1992. In Torin, I was leveled by my father's words, by his admissions of feeling as if he couldn't cope because of what he was experiencing in the workplace. And I read that at a time that I was going through my own turmoil and in my corporate job. And I remember reading that and saying to myself, I felt as if my father was sending me a message to tell me, do not let them break me like they broke him. And it was with that I made the decision to open up my own firm. I was contemplating it. I was thinking about it. I was wrestling with it. And it was that reading of my father's folder that said, I am going to break free of this and I'm going to go out on my own and start my own firm. But I think about my father, all that he experienced in his life and what informed who he was at that point in his career. Being a Black man raised in Nashville, Tennessee, being a Black man who joined the Army and fought in Vietnam and migrated to New Jersey with my mother, just trying to find a way to be able to make an equitable living so he could take care of them. Having one Black child, divorcing my mother, getting remarried and divorcing again and feeling like a failure inside of his marriage, and all of the experiences that informed when he spoke out at work in his role. you know um I thought about him when I saw what I saw on January 6th. And I thought about how many people go into organizations and go into companies and have those experiences where they are stressed, where they feel as if they are having problems coping with the way that they are seeing this country show up, and who it gives certain privileges and certain access to, and then who it denies and who it holds back. All right. And then when we think about the government, our government and this administration over the last 5 years and how it's spoken to the people, certain people in this country, between the xenophobia and the racism and the sexism that we have seen, and how that pusses up inside of people's system. And then you see what happens when people who've been told for the last 5 years that they're better than, they're part of making a country great again, that they are more entitled than the rest of the American public is entitled to certain liberties, right, and to certain jurisdiction over our government. And how people who look like me and who look like you, how they must be processing this in workplaces. And I said, I got to talk to Torin because I need his assistance to be able to help me through this. I read a Facebook post from a friend, and she said, I'm posting memes and I'm posting commentary, and I'm trying to make people laugh about what we've seen. She said, and I'm doing that while I am sitting at my desk enraged. And it's this duality that we experience on trying to show up into the world, holding all of that in, that is it's harmful, it's not helpful, and our organizations are not doing enough of a job to make sure that we're addressing this, that we're fixing our corporate climates, that we're fixing our cultures, our professional cultures, to be able to deal with this so we can move forward as better and more progressive employees and employers, and as Americans. And I want your weigh in on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that you said there, and there's so many aspects, and I don't want to move away um, from the events earlier in the month of January, but I'm going to do such with purpose. I think back to Q4 of 2020, and in Q4, there began to bubble a conversation around whether or not employers had the right to demand that employees took vaccinations. Even before that, in Q4, there was the conversation around whether or not employers could demand knowing whether or not an employee were or were not attending a holiday gathering. Were you going to be around a number of people? Yes or no? If you say yes, awesome, we're going to do some contact tracing. If you say no, and we find out that you were around uh, um, people or at a gathering, then A, we're going to hold you accountable and we're going to have some administrative action. And B, you're going to have to quarantine. There was a bunch of conversation in Q4 around how employees and employers in that relationship around the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. When you think about culture, and you go even further back in 2020 around the social unrest
Mm-hmm.
and what came about as a result of that,
Of the killing of George Floyd. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. What I've always said, Sylvia, is that people are people first before any of their titles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a person before a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a person before a politician, before a policeman, before a supply chain analyst, before an accountant, and so on and so on and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think about the workplace and I think about the work that I do, I'm always trying to target and attack how a person shows up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always trying to target and attack how a person wrestles with humanity.
Mm-hmm.
How do you wrestle with being a better human?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't care so much so about all of the data that you can pull down, because you can pull all types of data down from your HRM systems, and you can run all types of report around your workforce and who's there, who's not there, and who has benefits, who doesn't have benefits, and who was last promoted and not promoted. And we can make the data tell any story that we'd like for it to tell. But in the end, it comes down to how we are treating and engaging with individuals. And so I think about what happened earlier in the month of January, and I say to myself, but I'm not surprised.
Right.
I'm not surprised that these individuals are the same individuals that are sitting in workplaces all around this country, that on Capitol Hill were pastors, were clergymen, were law enforcement, were legal professionals, and warehouse professionals, and Uber drivers, and Lyft drivers, and people that are hosting folks in their homes on Airbnb, and all types of other professions, folks from the entertainment community, the music community. They were all I can almost assure you, unless we are talking about a finite or minuscule population of people doing some type of work, almost every SIC code or job code was represented on Capitol Hill earlier this month. And those people, if in fact they can blend in, they're going to come right back to your organization and operate the way that they operate, delivering HR policy, understanding whether or not you can or cannot receive resources for the work that you need to do, being an advocate for you to receive some degree of a promotion or the support that you need, positioning you for that business development or that client engagement call, advocating for your creative ideas, because we know that those ideas are the ones that the marketplace needs, taking credit for those ideas, shunning you, leaving you out of the meeting, Sylvia, but I'm going to take that idea from you and I'm going to present that idea as if it's mine. Those individuals, those white men and women, not exclusively, but largely, those white men and women were the ones sitting on the steps of Capitol Hill, roaming through the corridors of power. They were the ones that put their feet up on the desk. They unfortunately were the ones who lost their life. For what? Because racism has held our country hostage. We're
here with Torin, Ellis. I'm your host, Sylvia Austin. This is Next Nation. We'll take a quick break and come right back.
I'm Noah.
And I'm Ava.
And you're listening to our mom,
Sylvia K. Austin, on Next Nation, the podcast. Yes, sir.
We're back. Racism is holding us hostage.
It absolutely is. I mean, again, when we release our relationship with racism, when we challenge our relationship with racism, and I said we, I didn't say white folks. Right. I said we. When we release our relationship with racism, when we challenge our relationship with racism, it allows us to then descend into those institutions and those systems that I mentioned a bit earlier. It allows us to look at how we govern in our cities. It allows us to look at how we erect public policy. It allows us to look at financial services and how those institutions operate in certain zip codes and communities and cities and all. It allows us to evaluate how we farm, how we dole out policing, how we look at housing, where we set up grocery stores, how we erect entertainment. It allows us to look at where churches are and liquor stores are. It looks at every single thing about our life, but until we are willing to be honest with our challenge of racism, good or bad, and I shouldn't say good or bad, that's not a good way to, but when we look at our participation in having to challenge that being under siege, if you will, it will influence how we move differently, which is the reason why I'm not a shrinking violet. I am not going to provide cover. I'm not going to provide operational support. In the military, there's something called operational support, operational cover. Like I knew if I was on the ground doing something, I was participating in a particular exercise. I was responsible for, making sure that this particular geography or area or zone was protected. Was covered. Mm-hmm. I had operational cover. I had the air support that I needed. I had the comms support that I needed. I had people looking at graphs. I had everything operational cover. Well, I'm not providing racists with any operational cover. It's high time that we challenge white women to stop making apple pies for their racist husbands and brothers and cousins.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sure. It's high time that we stop providing them with the ingredients and the support that they need to bake these racist apple pies. As Black folks, it's high time that you start speaking up even more and louder. That if in fact you don't do it now, then you deserve every single thing that these racist white people give you.
So I had a woman reach out to me on LinkedIn after I made the posting, and she thanked me for my work and told me that she worked in the DE&I space. And she told me that she was having a hard time having these conversations in her workplace. And she sits as the DEI specialist.
Sure.
And I said to myself, sis, how can you be employed to be in a social position to speak confidently, okay?
Symbolism.
About these issues. And when these issues happen, nationally, internationally, for inside of your organization, you have to address this. You have to have protocol, policies, procedures ready to deal with what the employees are experiencing. This is your responsibility. Yeah. And you talking about a post that I put up on LinkedIn that you're not prepared or you're not ready. How are
Symbolism.
It doesn't make sense to me. You're right. Black folks have for too long sat and stewed in our workplaces and in our spaces. We're not taking up the kind of space that we need to be taking up with racism. And while I do love what Twitter has given us the opportunity to do socially, we've still got more work to do. It's not enough for us to put 240 characters out into the universe and call that activism. Every single day, every part, every walk, every parcel, everywhere I go, I am making sure that I am putting an end to whatever I can do. I am putting a stamp on and letting people know that you're not going to be around me. You're not going to talk down about people who look like me, and I'm going to ignore it. You're not going to puff up racism. You're not going to promote what Donald Trump has done over the last 5 years to this country and tell me that this is okay, that we're exercising our voice, that this is not racism when y'all are walking through the halls of the U.S. Capitol with Confederate flags. I'm not going to allow you to do it. I'm not going to allow you to do it. And so what you just said is so poignant and so important. Black folks they have to stop sitting with it, stewing in it, becoming stressed out by it, allowing it to let them destroy themselves and their own individual lives because they refuse to deal with it, because they refuse to call a thing. And like you said, white folks, we're not going to let anybody off the hook for entertaining it for as long as we've entertained it. It has to stop.
We've sacrificed for less. And what I mean by that is we have left organizations. And when I say we, all of us at some point in our career, we've decided, oh, you know what? I'm not going to work for company A. I want to go work for company B because whatever, the commute is shorter. The notoriety is better. I think the client or the type of work that I'll be doing is a bit more engaging and fun. Whatever, we made a variety of reasons why we have made decisions to leave employers. And I think we are at a moment where chief diversity officers in this country should be able to walk into their CEO's office and say, how serious are you about this work? And if in fact you are serious, then I need you to show me your declarative statement. I need you to show me how you are reallocating resources to support this particular work. And I want to see what your timeline is for holding individuals accountable. Declarative statement, reallocation of resources, timeline for holding people accountable. If the CEO can't talk to those three things right there, I'm going to make a decision that this is probably not a place where I want to be. You can bring in another chief diversity officer, but this is not where I'm not going to be the symbol, the face of diversity and inclusion, knowing that I am not supported. The reporting, the data is there. Most chief diversity officers are under-resourced, under-supported, and have no power.
Mm-hmm. They have no power to make this. Yeah.
Now, here's what's interesting. I can take my resume right now and send it to Fortune 1000 organizations, Fortune 1500 organizations, and they will send me back an auto-generated email that says you are not qualified to lead diversity and inclusion at our organization. And I'm telling you this because I've done it. And I smile because I know that in some of those instances, Sylvia, I'm the diversity consultant that they're paying. You won't hire me to be on the staff to lead the initiative, but you will engage with me as a consultant to come in and help shape the initiative, to in some cases build the initiative. So I just feel like as a chief diversity officer, whomever they are, man, woman, black, white, brown, it doesn't, Protestant, Muslim, liberal, if you are sitting in that role and you care about doing the work, then it is incumbent upon you to get to the CEO and say, what does this look like? I know what I'm willing to commit to. I know what I'm willing to be held accountable for, but how are you going to support this work so that I'm not just a symbol in the press? I'm not going to be a symbol. And when we do that, Sylvia, I guarantee you, we will have monumental movement in this conversation by December of this year. The biggest thing that I take away from last year, I had 3 clients, 3, that said, you know what, Torin? This is a good idea. The idea was to make an edit to the performance reviews of every employee. And that edit was, we need to add some form of measurement around that person's participation around DEIB efforts and initiatives. I'm not saying that they don't get a bonus. I'm not saying that this is something that prevents them from being promoted, going after a new opportunity. I'm not saying that this is something that causes them to lose employment. But what I am saying is that I want on the record every single employee to be measured on how are you contributing to the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging efforts that we pronounce and say are important. I got 3 companies to make that change to their performance evaluation system. I had an incredible year last year. And so now my goal this year, can we get 10? Can we get 10 companies to do that? And what happens when you have hundreds of thousands of people responsible, knowing that a portion of their evaluation is tied to whether or not you are contributing to shifting the narrative? A portion of your evaluation says that you joined an ERG, that you have done something in the community to support our CSR or corporate social responsibility efforts. You've done something in that regard. You've been supportive of a Black or brown or underrepresented employee. You've connected us to an LGBTQ or a organization that supports people with disabilities. You've done something versus you took your ass out to Capitol Hill and you wanted to show off, and because your feelings were hurt because your guy didn't win the presidency. You understand the difference? I did something in my organization to show that I am advancing inclusion versus going out there and being a jackass. So my win for 2020 2020 wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the number of times that I spoke. It wasn't about some of the incredible engagements that I participated in. My win was behind the scenes. 3 companies have now said we're going to measure every single employee in their contribution to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Let me tell you something, Sil. I say this without any reservation. It ain't too many people that rock the way that I do.
Mm-hmm. Torin, I got a question for you. How do you, because when I think about what we saw last year, 2020 was, life-changing, a life-changing year for so many of us. When you talk to these corporations, and can you get them to admit, though, some of their duplicitousness? And I say that because in the same mind frame, let's take Siriusxm. Siriusxm is a company that is owned by Liberty Media. So I can share this with you, and I can share this with this group. Before I was informed that my contract was not going to be renewed, I had made a decision to walk away from Siriusxm. And I had made a decision to walk away from my show. I was no longer in a headspace that allowed me to work in an organization or for a company that I knew was supporting Donald Trump. Liberty Media, the parent company of Siriusxm, is a huge Trump supporter. They were a huge campaign contributor to the Trump campaign. And I said, to be on a network where we are working about promoting the lives and improving the lives of Black people, it feels as if it is kind of there's a pull and a rub and a pull and a tug on my spirit if this is what they are doing behind the scenes. So I had already made the decision, in addition to all of the personal people that I was experiencing on the Urban View platform. But so many, I thought about this after I left. This situation is not unique. Companies all around this country will say that they want to be involved in diversity, equity, inclusion. They want to be involved in, putting out a declarative or a missive statement that they support the Black Lives Matter movement, or they support movements to make sure that there's equity for all of their employees, right? But then behind the scenes, they involve themselves in PAC support of these kinds of administrations or these kinds of organizations. So there's this duplicitousness that I believe that a lot of employees realize, and they experience it. And I think it messes with morale. And in messing with morale, then I think it also it impedes performance. There's a study out, and I think you talked about it on one of your shows. I think that's where I heard it, about how racism affects our productivity in the billions of dollars, right? It affects our ability to make more money, to earn more, in the billions of dollars, that we refuse to address it. So I know that there's a problem. There's a multifaceted problem. When you're doing your work, how do you get these companies and these corporations to tell the truth about their duplicitousness? Because that's how this thing lives. That's how this thing goes on.
Yeah, the Citibank report that I talked about, it was actually trillions of dollars and not billions. And that if in fact we continue to do what it is that we are doing, then we will cost the GDP another $5 trillion between now and 2025. Racism has cost, that's why I'm saying the country has been held hostage, under siege by racism. So let's put that aside. When you use the example of SiriusXM, I would challenge you, Sylvia, that you're being unfair. I'll give you a different example.
Okay.
James Harden, a couple of months ago, said that he wasn't going to renew his contract with the Houston Rockets. Multi-million-dollar contract. And people said, well, you know what? He's got character, and that's it, all of the other positive attributes that they gave him, because he attributed to, because the owner supported Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. Well, if you do a little bit of digging and go a couple of layers deep, the owner also supported Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. The owner also was very supportive of whatever the team wanted to do, whether it be wear a t-shirt that said, "I can't breathe," or some other number of different things. That owner was very supportive of their efforts to be expressive.
Okay.
So I can't be mad at 70% of corporate leaders that support Republicans. 70%.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be honest with yourself, then we wouldn't be working for a whole lot of these companies. We wouldn't be working for them. We wouldn't be doing business with them.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned with the fact that you decide
you don't care about the political stance at all.
It's not that I don't care. It's just that I can't solely let that be the driver of my decision.
Agreed.
I can't solely let that be, whether or not, in this example, whether or not I'm going to stay on the Siriusxm platform.
Okay.
I didn't give a fuck I'm sorry.
You ain't got to apologize to, you're talking to me.
I didn't care who he supported.
Right.
I knew my mission was bigger than his support. My mission was to make sure that my listeners got some information that they weren't receiving. Once again, I back out, then who's filling that void around career development and all of that other stuff that is extremely important?
I got it. And listen, and I'm telling you how I felt, and you've told me this personally. So the fact that you're telling it to me publicly, I think is not only helpful for me, but it'll be helpful for a lot of people who find themselves in situations similar. So
you can't just make the decision based off of any one thing in many instances. Again, not a blanket statement. I just want people to be more conscious about how they arrive at. That's that word process.
Not a blanket statement at all. And I'm glad that you challenged me on that. And here's why I'm glad that you challenged me on that. A lot of the people that I do business with who allow me to be the person that handles their risk management program, a lot of these people are wealthy white men. And they realize that I do a job, and I do a job very well, and we do not share political views, and we can have conversations about the difference of our views. And I know that they respect me. So this is not necessarily about the fact that there is different points of view. I get that. The people who allow me, some of the people who make investments in my business and allow me to pay bills that allows me to feed my family, come from people who do not have the same ideologies that I do. So I respect that, and I appreciate you for challenging me on that. It is just for me, where we are right now, Torin, is different than different ideology. What the support of this kind of leadership, the support of this administration feels like the kind of oppression that prevents me from leading the life that I. But
I'm not trying to talk over you, but I'm just jumping in and simply saying, in some of those instances, Sylvia, it's not support for the person, it's the policy. And unfortunately, I got to vote for the policy, and the person comes along with it. If my taxes are being lowered because I care that much about that, let's face it, there are people that care that much about it. I don't want to pay more taxes. I don't want X. I don't want this legislation. I don't want it. And
here's the thing, Torin, we're business owners, both of us. I don't want to pay more taxes either. I don't. There are a lot of policies that affect how we rock, on a day-to-day business. I think it's the voice. For me, it is symbolic. It is the voice that comes along. It's the voice that comes along with it. But I respect fully what you're saying.
Yeah,
and I think this conversation is necessary.
And I'm not letting any of them so much so off the hook per se. I'm just simply saying that, one of the issues that I have when I listen to a lot of these hosts on radio shows, when I watch, and I don't watch a lot of television, but when I watch some of the newscasts on digital platforms, one of the frustrations for me is that we are overly one-sided.
Yeah, for sure.
We are quick to categorize blanketly. If you supported Donald Trump, you are a racist. No, you're not. You're not a racist just because you supported him. Now, it's a whole bunch of them son of a guns that are.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of them, but not all of them. Not maybe even a lot of them. And so when we say, throw out all of these terms, and again, Sylvia, I'm not the smartest person. I don't know socialist versus Marxist versus, I don't know all of that stuff. And I'm not quick to arrive at a decision around trying to categorize or name call an individual, but I am going to talk to you straight up. Like, well, why do you support that? Well, why do you support that? And is that right there enough of, is it that important for you? So I'm willing to have the conversation and to challenge them and to go back and forth, which is why
you have to. That's your business. That's your business.
20 minutes ago, what did I say? I got friends that I'm still explaining. And I said friends. I didn't say I cut them off. They're friends. I know where they stand. I'm still dealing with them trying to go back and forth with me, tit for tat, and what about ism and all of that other. I get it. So I'm just simply saying that I think that we do have to shift our relationship with power. We do have to become more vocal about what is important to us. And we got to challenge some of these folks that, look, we understand our value and we understand our place, and, things are shifting and you're going to have to deal with the shift. And part of this shift may mean you lose a bit of your power. Part of this shift means you lose a bit of that notoriety that you are used to. You lose a bit of that red carpet access that you have had. You lose a bit of that cronyism that you have benefited from over the last 20 years. You lose a bit of that benefit of the doubt that you've been given when we weren't given it in our same exact workplaces. You're going to lose something, and that is okay. And what I want is for your listeners, I want underrepresented individuals to simply say to themselves, and I got to even challenge myself. Bree Newsom put up a post a couple of weeks ago, and she said, in the post, she said, when we use phrases like underrepresented, and I think I've said it 3 or 4 times since I've been on with you,
right?
When we use phrases like underrepresented, do we stop to ask ourselves, well, underrepresented by who? And what's the plan to make sure that they are, or under-resourced? Well, what's the plan to make sure that they do have the resources? And she went down a litany. It was only 2 or 3 bullet points, but she challenged us to say, if we're going to say a phrase, then what are we doing to correct it? What are we doing to make it better? That's the model. That's how I'm trying to show up. I'm always trying to show up willing to learn. How can I be better? Sure, you are contracting me to be your diversity consultant. You are engaging me to be your panel, keynote speaker, moderator. You are asking me to participate on your broadcast. But in all of that, Sylvia, there is a frequency that is running down my spine saying, but how do you show up better? How do you make sure that when you are responding to Sylvia, that you give something of value that her listeners can take away? How do you make sure that in your I'm always challenged. You can't see it, but the algorithm is always moving. How do I show up better? When I think about the experiences that I had in corporate America, when I think about the experiences that I had in the military, when I think about experiences that I've now had as an entrepreneur, I'm always evaluating folks. I'm kind of like a robot. I'm looking at them like, yep, your leadership style is whack. Your ability to communicate is whack. I don't ever want to show up like you.
Whack as hell, yes.
I don't ever want to be seen as you. I don't care that you have, hundreds of thousands of followers or that you make millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands. None of that impresses me.
Right.
I'm not impressed, and you know that. Yeah. I'm not impressed by a whole bunch of, it's very little that moves me.
Right. For sure.
Because I'm always grounded in, how do I be better? How do I show up better?
And I think, Torin, I love that. I love that about you. But I think that the lesson in some of this discussion, right? Because I started this off by saying, this is America. I think the lesson in what you're saying, we've gone all around the mulberry bush. But the lesson here for me, in our conversation and as I listen to you, is as a country, in our organizations, in our individual walks in life, in our homes, in our marriages, in our friendships, in our workplace experiences? Are we asking ourselves, are we doing that necessary work individually and collectively to say, how can I be better? And I think that is the reckoning for. I knew I was never going to be able to bait you into commenting the way I wanted you to comment on what we saw in on the steps of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. But I think you and I, the conversation that we are having is so poignant and important because you look at the world similarly as I do, but not the same. And your individual and your unique experience, it brings something out every single time you and I have a conversation. And I love that because for me, that's iron sharpening iron, right? But asking ourselves those questions is where as a country we really need to be. The reckoning for America, the truth telling that we need from our leadership, as we move forward, is telling the truth about who we've been and who we are, but addressing it in a way that allows us to ask ourselves, how can we be better tomorrow? And,
Listen,
and that's what I got out of what you said.
I'm gonna make space for that person with an Ivy League degree that is in a high-powered position, that is well compensated, beautiful family. I can sit at a table with them the very same way that I sit at a table with a person that is patting their head coming from the projects that may not have necessarily even secured an opportunity that pays them more than $30,000 a year. I can sit at that same table with them. I can rock with them. I can rock with a person from the middle of Iowa because I grew up there. So I can get busy with, a white person that grew up in Iowa working on a farm, just like I can get busy with a white person coming from Boston with yet again some modicum of success. I can sit at the table with those four individuals. I can sit at the table with a person with a hidden or visible disability and bring in another individual that's coming from a Muslim background, sit them right at the same table. The 6 or 7 of us can have a spirited conversation, and I'm cool with us going back and forth, the pluses and the minuses that may or may not exist, the opportunities where we agree and where we don't agree. And what I know and what I operate off of, Sylvia, is that in many instances, 7, 8, 9 times out of 10, we all are going to agree on, what, look, for real, we are absolutely happy to be here. And we had a very good time tonight. Food was great, beverages were great, conversation and energy were great. We may disagree a bit on this or that, but the point is we enjoyed the time that we spent together. And that's what I'm always looking for. Again, I ain't trying to sit around a bunch of racists. That's the only person that wasn't sitting at that table. See, I ain't like Jesus with the 12 disciples in the sense of, I'm gonna let that 13th be a person that's a racist. Nah, you ain't sitting at my table. That's the only person where I have no cut card. If I know that you are a racist and that you are doing everything that you can to prevent me from achieving some degree of progress, that you are causing harm to my people, then I am never making space for them, ever.
Yeah, never make space for that. Never make space for that. T, what you got on the docket? Over the next couple of months, weeks.
And let me just say this to you. I said 2020 was good.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna just give you a preview and just simply say that I have a couple of speaking engagements between now and the end of April. One of the conferences that I'm speaking at, 30,000 people registered for the virtual event last Q3. 30,000. Keynote. 30,000 people.
Get that work, T. Get that work.
I got a feature coming out in the largest newspaper in the country in March. So when I say I don't care about you giving me an L and you telling me no, I know who I am.
You know who you are.
I know what I bring to the equation. So when you say what I got coming up, I got some good shit popping.
Oh God.
That's
I
right.
love
We got
I
some
love
good
you
shit popping.
I love you so much. I do.
Yes, indeed.
I love you so much. Listen, spend 5 more minutes with me. Spend 5 more minutes with me. You and
Where you
I.
want to go? Rapid fire? What you want to do? Let's do it.
No rapid fire.
All right.
No
What's
rapid
up?
fire. I want to talk to you from a number of different angles. 5 decades of life. You know, you've seen a lot. You moved all over the country, been in the military, have a number of different experiences. You are a husband, father, family man, involved or played the drums in the church as a kid. People wouldn't they don't get a chance to see that side of you, and your friendship for me has been super, super, super important. 5 decades of life, you know, what are you learning in this new season about who you are becoming that is important to the walk, the work, and the ministry and the development of TE?
Yeah, so I think you actually just hit it. You didn't purposefully hit it, but this is my ministry. Like, I absolutely understand that I am here and I'm supposed to be doing work around diversity and inclusion efforts on a corporate level. That I understand that this artwork that is behind me costs more than some organizations are investing in diversity and inclusion. This piece behind me. So I know that I'm here to agitate and to try to activate those individuals. I know that I'm here to inspire Black and brown people and other voices that are often unheard and unsung, to give them the cadence and the tenor that they should say to themselves, you know what, there's no reason for me to continue to labor, to, is it languish in this capacity for any longer. I remember when we were on Siriusxm, I would get a flurry of emails from people that had been in positions for 15, 20, 25 years and not really received any benefit from that. So I know that a portion of me and what I've learned is I'm supposed to engage, energize, inspire, motivate those individuals to take action. I've learned that my patience is a little bit different. Like, I'm not going to allow people to pacify me. I'm not going to allow people to devalue me. I am willing to, in the midst of a pandemic, raise my prices on every single thing that I do, because I'm not going to be devalued. I'm not going to be devalued by corporate America. I'm not going to be devalued by any individual. I'm not going to be devalued.
Yeah.
Like, I absolutely have learned that. I've learned that in order for me to be a better family man, husband, friend, brother to my sisters, uncle to my nieces and nephews. Yes,
Yeah.
it takes my presence, that I can't take any of that for granted.
Yeah.
And I learned that I'm in the last half of my year. I learned that I'm in the last half of my years and that I can't take any particular instance or scenario for granted. And so I'm not obligated to be doing this right here. I can do this over here. I can take some chances over here. And that even though I'm 50, and I may say to myself, dang, man, starting a tech company is for them young folks. I'm never operating like that. Like, if I have the willpower, the brain, and the resources to bring it to life, that I'm going to bring it to life. What I learned, Sylvia, now, and the way that I operate, is that I don't have to have all of the answers. And I don't need to show up as if I have all of the answers. I just need to show up.
Another question for you. Black man in America, with your particular experience and your particular voice, your particular cadence and how you rock. One of the things that I think, I know that I've seen over the last year specifically, but there's nothing new under the sun. This has been happening since I've seen us in TV and in media. We don't often get an opportunity to see strong Black men talk about their experiences, talk about this kind of stuff that you are talking about. and talk with the confidence, if you will, we don't get a chance to see those images have staying power, right? And I think it's necessary. I've told you this before, and you've resisted me. You are a multifaceted Black man. You've got a number of urns in the fire, and you've got a number of items and skill set that I think are not only intelligible but important to the diaspora. And I want to continue to encourage you to be visible, to shake the tree, to speak so eloquently and confidently when you speak, to give them that fire. I mean, because you sitting here in your beanie hat, and in your sweatshirt and your beard, and people don't necessarily might not know by looking at you that you go into these corporate organizations in these spaces and turn them shits upside down, you know but I think that's what's so real and so important about your voice. And that you, like you said, you can sit with 6 or 7 different people and have a very important and poignant conversation. It's important for us, people who look like me and people who do not, to see Black men operate in that way. So I just want to continue to encourage you to be more visible, you know,
Yeah.
to continue
No,
to take up space, because brothers need that. And too often your voices are the voices that media will extract or say are not important, or they weren't involved. I think about this Black voters process. So much credit has gone to Black women for how they showed up and what they did in this election cycle. And I don't want to take any attention off of what sisters did, but and how they showed up and how they supported this new election cycle that we're in. But so did Black men. And when we allow media, when we allow other people to shape the narrative and the conversation, and we allow Black male voices to be muted in that way, what it does is it draws a wedge between Black people and Black family. And I've told you before that for me, this effort, the work that I do, it's important for me. I was thinking real recently about, how much of myself, how much of my marriage, how much of my family do I share with the public, because I want to protect their privacy, right? They're not in the work that I'm in, right? They didn't ask to be in this visible space. My children did not ask to be seen. But when people reach out to me, the first thing that they always comment on, Torin, is my family, the strength that they see in my Black family. And so I know that it is part of my work. You said, what's part of your ministry? This is part of my ministry. It's part of my legacy to make sure that that Black families do exist, that Black families do stay together amid pandemics, amid up and downs in their lives, amid bad health, amid job loss, amid desperate times. They do stay together, and they do win, and they do look like us, and they do go out and do amazing things. That's part of my legacy. So I just want to tell you that this is also part of yours, and I'm forcing you out. I'm forcing you out front a little bit more to kind of talk this shit, because I need you out in these streets. So
no, I appreciate it, and I'm smiling on my side because you blessed me with more than an hour of access to your time, your listeners, and I'm smiling because I didn't have to share time with Jason, Midwin, and Charles. Like, I got my own hour. So I'm just see they had to break up. They had to kind of get it all in a limited amount of time. I'm smiling over this joint because I had the stage on to myself, so I'm good. You understand what I'm saying?
You worth all that. You worth all that.
I'm just trying to tell you. So I get it, and we are going to do all that we can to continue to move. And I receive what you are saying. I understand that we are multifaceted and that there is more that I could talk about than diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I am reticent about having those conversations. I don't veer off into politics or policing or, community engagement or
you say
activism.
that ain't your work. That ain't your
It's not about work. So I tend to not necessarily have those conversation, public facing conversations. I'll do it behind the curtain. If you will, but again, I agree with you. I appreciate you. And on that, I just simply say thank you for even giving me time on your platform. And congratulations to you on moving forward, not allowing yourself to say that this departure on one platform will prevent me from being on another platform. This being told no on one platform doesn't set me up for, or I'm not, or doubting yourself, that imposter syndrome as to whether or not you are ready and prepared enough for another platform. So congratulations to you on what you are about to do in 2021. You're about to wreak havoc. Like, I want you to run through 2021 and make some things happen.
Thanks, T. I appreciate you. And I'm gonna have you back because there's a couple of things that I want to talk to you about that has absolutely nothing to do with business, just us shooting the shit. So I'm gonna have you back, and I'm gonna have you back soon. Because it's, because I could do that.
Absolutely. You absolutely can.
Absolutely can. Because this is my shit, so I can do that.
And shout out to Gary and the rest of the team down there in Houston that are working behind the scenes
for sure
to help amplify what you were doing. And I like that royal color of purple.
Thank you.
You're doing some things over there. So thank you. Thank Gary. And let's do it again whenever you're ready.
T, I'll see you soon, baby.
You got it.
All right. Torin Ellis, everybody. Next Nation, the podcast, would like to thank Sphere Podcast Studios in Houston, Texas, under the direction of Gary Lee. Our creative launch team, Latif Harris, Devon Warren, Emo Rice, Tiffany Thompson, Tanisha Malone, Hugh Cardis. Music production by Jean-Pierre Zephyr. My writing coach, Linda Jones of The Writing Doula. Spiritual leader, Reverend Timothy Atkins Jones. And finally, my family. My husband and associate producer, James J. Alston. Thank you, honey, for all of your love and support of this effort. My mom, Shirley Key. Mommy, I love you forever and always. And finally, my children, Noah and Ava Alston, who also act as junior producers for Next Nation, the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you soon.